Good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to another edition of Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your business diva, Melanie Collette, broadcasting live via SHR Media and also streaming live on Facebook. I am very pleased to have as my guest this afternoon Tracey Bisssett. She's a speaker and financial coach. She's going to talk to us about cash flow planning for the entrepreneurs in good times and bad. So I'm really glad that I have her on the show today. I hope you all are doing well. Before I get into today's topic, and of course, I have to talk about what's going on in the Money Talk news. This is not necessarily have to do with money, but of course, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the George Floyd killing and the fact that there were new charges brought to the police officers that were charged with his killing. The main police officer, Derek Chauvin, his charge was lifted up to second-degree murder from third-degree murder, and I believe that the other three officers are also going to be charged with second-degree murder as well. That sounds like a heavy lift to me, but I'm not the professional when it comes to that kind of stuff. But I think it's kind of a bad situation when the whole world, a bad situation for the killers, when the whole world, and for making sure that justice is served the way it's supposed to be served, when the whole world believes that you're guilty. So it's going to be a tough situation. I think it's going to be a tough trial. It's incredibly hard to convict police officers. I don't know, in this environment, maybe it'll be a little easier, but that's what happened today. And of course, the protests continue. There was a small protest near where I live, but it ended very peacefully with our mayor meeting with the NAACP and a couple of other of our county and local organizations. And it ended in prayer. It did not end in any rioting and looting, which was fantastic. But it's a tough situation. Nobody wants to see a person die like that, especially on camera. And you just wonder, you haven't heard what the police officer's side is to that. I cannot imagine what kind of defense you have to that when the whole thing is on camera. But that said, you also have a whole lot of looting in addition to the riots. And to me, that just takes away from your message when you're looting like that. I mean, I don't understand what looting has to do with the death of that poor man. So when you have that kind of situation going on, it's hard to tell. But the whole situation is just a sad situation. That's the bottom line. I didn't want to focus too much on that because I feel like it's probably being talked about a lot already. This is actually the next item that I wanted to talk about is Google and the fact that Google is being sued over their private browsing. And the reason why they're being sued, it's a class action lawsuit that alleges that Google is violating wiretap laws by collecting information about the user behavior on the internet while you're in incognito mode. And if anybody knows anything about incognito mode, that's the mode where you're supposed to be kind of surfing under the radar. You're not supposed to be, nobody's supposed to know where you're going. That's the whole philosophy behind surfing incognito or in incognito mode. And according to the plaintiffs in this case, Google and the class action lawsuit, Google has been collecting behavior information, and that defeats the whole purpose of surfing incognito. You're not supposed to be doing that. So there's a class action lawsuit against them for allegedly, it's alleged, they haven't been nothing's been settled yet as far as whether or not they're actually doing it. But knowing Google the way I do, and Google being kind of evil, it wouldn't surprise me. Am I allowed to say that? I think I am. It wouldn't surprise me if that's what's going on with Google Incognito. Warner Music Group said its IPO, its initial public offering, raised $1.993 billion, and a sign that investors' appetite for new issues remains strong despite the current climate of economic uncertainty. And this is according to the editors at LinkedIn. And there's a lot of uncertainty in the market right now. We have the protests going on in several cities all across the nation. We, of course, have businesses that are recovering from COVID and having to be closed for 2 months. Where I live here in New Jersey, we're still locked down. We just were allowed to have outside dining in our restaurants, but our Governor Murphy has been very, very, very slowly allowing us to open up certain things, even though in my county alone, for example, in the county that I live in, we have very few COVID cases. Today, we actually had 0 COVID cases. I mean, we flattened that curve as much as it could possibly be flattened. And we're still seriously on lockdown. It's a shame. It's an absolute shame. The other thing I wanted to note was that the SAT has been canceled. The College Board is scrapping plans to administer at-home SAT tests, and they're asking schools not to punish applicants who can't submit their test scores. That's a very interesting turn of events, especially I work at I'm a teacher by vocation. I teach financial literacy and economics and computer science. And I find that interesting. A lot of stuff has been canceled. We don't even know if school is going to be back open next year. It's really, I'm surprised that they're doing it. And I wonder if they're going to weight other things heavier as far as the colleges are concerned, or how they're going to do it. And then there's some talk that outside of the whole COVID situation, which is why I'm sure that they're scrapping those plans. Outside of that, there's always talks of scrapping standardized tests as far as admission to colleges because of the theory that they're unfair to certain groups of people. So, or they're talking about either scrapping that test or making it more passable for different groups of people who are less privileged and may not have the same access to education as other kids. It's really a strange phenomena, if you ask me, but some of the stuff that they're planning on doing, I think anytime you do things by race and color, you're probably making a mistake. That's just one brown girl's opinion. One last thing, Zoom has cashed in on their remote work trend. Everybody's using Zoom, even though it's warning about Zoom. It's apparently super hackable, but a lot of people are using it. Like we had a meeting down here locally where the municipality was using it and somebody hacked in and put some naughty stuff up there. It was not a good situation, but they're cashing in because of soaring demand for its use. So that makes a lot of sense. It's now 5:15. We're going to go to our first break. Next up is a brand new Ron Edwards notebook, and he's going to talk about the Floyd killing in this one. It should be a really good one. We'll be back with my guest, Tracey Bissett. Can't wait to talk to her. We'll be back in a few minutes.
The recent death of George Floyd in Minneapolis was, of course, needless and stupid. There is absolutely no excuse, but perhaps there is an underappreciated wicked reason for Floyd's needless death. Hello, I'm Ron Edwards. On today's page from the Edwards Notebook, George Floyd died after a struggle with Minneapolis police officers who confronted him because he matched the description of a suspect in a forgery case. at a grocery store and that he resisted arrest. After taking George Floyd to the ground and subduing him, the four officers should have had enough brain power amongst them to figure out, hey, let's place handcuffs on him, take him in and figure out the crime situation. Instead, the idiot officer proudly left his knee on the back of Floyd's neck, looking like he was trying to grind it into the concrete. The only part of Floyd moving at this time was his mouth as he hollered, "Please, please, please, I can't breathe," after which he called out his mother's name and died. This travesty was either carried out by four dummies or was part of a grand scheme to provoke riots and blame President Trump for such evil behavior. I'm Ron Edwards. Check out theronedwards.com.
Ron Edwards, the new voice of America.
Sponsored by the Tri-County Liberty Coalition.
Don't just pass the IRS exams. Why not pass them all and get a solid tax education too? Visit irsexams.school and let the Tax Mama staff get you started today. All our live and self-study tax courses offer you the convenience to study online on your own time and have everything you need to succeed. Tax Mama teaches you tax law, practice, and representation from the ground up. That's irsexams.school. Why wait? Get enrolled today in our premium course or the self-study class. That's irsexams.school. It's way more than just a review course. It will improve your entire future.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. My guest today is Tracey Bissett. She's a speaker and financial consultant, financial counselor. She's going to talk to us today about cash flow planning for entrepreneurs who want to stay afloat during good times and bad times. So I'm really excited to have her on the show today. A little bit about Tracey. She has over 20 years experience in the financial service industry, and she helps entrepreneurs across all industries, both on and offline. She's the founder, president, and chief financial fitness trainer at Bissett Financial Fitness Incorporated, and she helps her clients understand and improve their level of financial fitness with the goal of increased confidence using their financial skills so that they can be successful in their financial lives. In addition, Tracey is a professor at Centennial College's School of Business and regularly leads speaking engagements to increase financial fitness and awareness. And without further ado, the one and only Tracey Bissett. Yay! So hopefully, here we go, 3, 2, 1. And now we can see Miss Tracey Bissett. I'm going to move over a little bit so they can still see me. Hi, welcome to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm so glad to have you.
Thank you so much, Melanie. It's my pleasure to be here today.
So is there anything in your background that I left out that you want my audience to know?
I think what's interesting to know is when we were in the financial crisis in 2008, I was working in a big Canadian bank that's also in the eastern seaboard of the U.S., TD Bank. And so I saw what happened at that time from the bank side and could see the challenges entrepreneurs were going through given what was happening in the economy. And so now, fast forward, we're here. We've got not only a health crisis, but a financial crisis as well. And so now I'm sitting on the entrepreneur side too. And it's different and to be on this side, and certainly good to see the parallels and what learnings that we have from before that we can use now.
Indeed. And we're in such a precarious position right now with with COVID having affected businesses the way they've affected businesses, having to have most of them shut down during this COVID era for the last 80 days or so. And then now, of course, businesses are slowly opening back up or we're on their way to opening back up. And a lot of them, unfortunately, can't because of the protesting that's going on in all these cities all over the country.
Absolutely.
And so how do you, during COVID, what were you recommending that entrepreneurs do to sort of try to bide their time until they were able to open back up?
Well, absolutely. The first thing that any entrepreneur should be doing is taking a look at their financial position and assessing where are they now What are the things they're going to have to pay over the next few months? What are the revenues that may still come in? If there isn't anything because of the nature of their business, could they make any changes to generate revenue potentially in a different way than they were doing before? And so a lot of entrepreneurs I know go into business because they're super passionate about whatever they do, their product, their service, and they may not necessarily have any training in the money piece. And so they may tend to ignore those numbers. And then I find that can add to additional stress. So get the facts. Then you can actually make concrete plans and focus on what is the actual issue and then make a plan to move forward. So first off, get the facts, figure out where you are. And then I've been seeing different business owners and people that I've been working with. Some are in really good positions because of the nature of the industry that they're in. Some had cash reserves built up, which is going to help them weather the storm for a little bit. Because we certainly don't know where the new normal will be. We're in some kind of situation right now, but I think the months ahead are going to be very telling, and we don't know where that will move to. Anybody who had limited debt, that's a good place to be. But if you are in a situation where maybe you had a lot of debt, maybe you didn't have a lot of cash reserves built up, I'm really encouraging all entrepreneurs to apply for whatever programs they can from the government that will support them. Build up those cash reserves with that. If you have the ability to get deferred payments on, say, credit cards, car loans, any kind of business loan, if you need it, you should be asking for the help. And really important to keep in mind, entrepreneurs shouldn't be feeling like I'm a failure. This is only happening to me. This is happening to people all across the world. And because of that, there are many programs available. The companies and the financial institutions are telling you how to take advantage of maybe deferrals, missed payments, skip payments, or to get access to funding. So follow their instructions, get the money, and kind of leave that baggage and that shame aside, because this is a situation that is completely unprecedented. We're all going through it together, but we're not in the same boat. And so we need to take care of our own respective financial positions.
That is very true. I like the way you said that we're all in it together, but we're not all in the same boat. And that is very true. And so you recommend that people take advantage of the government programs that are being introduced through different laws and things like that, like the CARE Act, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. If they qualify, I'm not suggesting that people try to qualify for things they don't meet the criteria. And here in Canada, unfortunately, we know some entrepreneurs are falling through the cracks. So I would say if you're not qualifying for some of these approaches, if there's something that you can do, if you can speak out and reach out to advocacy groups, absolutely. In Canada, the advocacy group has been actually getting the government to make change, bringing it to the government's attention, who's falling through the cracks. And so just because one program has already been launched doesn't mean there won't be others. As I said, we don't know where we're going. We don't know how long this is going to be. And so we want to make sure we take advantage of anything we can that will help us stay afloat.
Indeed. Here in the United States, they've actually made some changes to the CARE Act that are supposed to make the qualifications a little bit easier. They're giving more time for entrepreneurs to actually spend the money that they're being given, and things like that. So, which is helpful, but it's just a really tough time for people to be in. And then when you transition to this other thing that happened in the news, totally out of the blue, where this gentleman gets killed. And my understanding is there's been protesting worldwide, not just here in the United States. Have there been protesting in Canada as well?
Absolutely. So I'm in Toronto, in Ontario, so just a little bit north of New York State. And so we've certainly seen it here. We're seeing it in other provinces across the country. And we do have racism in Canada. And so people are finding this is their moment. They want to speak out. They want to affect real change. And so you're trying to run your business. You're trying to stay afloat. You may have someone in your family who's ill, and now this has happened. And so people are facing a lot. It's definitely creating mental health challenges. Any one of those could create mental health challenges, and then all of them together is really creating difficult situations for people. And so if you're not feeling good, you should certainly reach out to people you know and trust, talk to people. Being isolated is really hard. Everybody's in their homes. So a lot of people are scared to go out, but we are still being encouraged to be locked down. So we don't even have that regular human connection we might have just in the passing of the day.
Indeed, they have that same, they're having the same lockdown in Canada as they're having here in the United States. Are they slowly opening up now in Canada, or are they still kind of locked like they are in New Jersey, in the state of New Jersey? They're like, we're still pretty much locked down.
It depends on the province. So some of the provinces that had tighter controls in the first place, maybe not as many people living there, they have a lot less cases. And so they're opening up sooner than I would say Ontario, where I live. We just had the first phase of opening, and we're going to see how that goes. And then they may even within my province have different rules for rural geographies versus the main city of Toronto, because the community spread still is happening quite a bit.
Sure, and that makes sense. And we are here in New Jersey are trying to get our governor to do that, but he's not giving it up. Like, we have a very, outside of New York City, we have a very dense population. But where I live, I happen to live near the beach in Cape May. It's a very rural population, and we, like I mentioned in the open, we had 0 cases today. Mm-hmm. It's normal. I think we had 1 case yesterday. And it's normal to be kind of low on a Sunday. The count's usually low on a Sunday. But on a Monday to have 0 cases is pretty good. So, but
that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's great. And my governor just doesn't want to hear it. So.
Well, the province that I'm in, we're having still hundreds, like multiple hundreds of cases a day, 300, really? 400. And so that, especially in the geography of Toronto, we're having a lot. So we want to be careful. We don't want people to die unnecessarily. And they are taking it really serious. And the further it goes on, the more supports I think will come from the government to make sure that everyone's being taken care of if they can't work.
Well, that's good. That's good. They don't necessarily, they're doing that too with us, but on a different kind of level. There's so many, I don't know if they have the same like left, right debates and things like that in Canada. You probably do, because we talk about Justin Trudeau quite a bit over here. I should say down here. We talk about, we hear Justin Trudeau in the news quite a bit. But now, so once this is all over and this has passed, hopefully, what is the biggest mistake that you would say entrepreneurs make? And it probably relates in some ways to what we're going through now, right? The biggest mistake that entrepreneurs make in just their regular doing business.
I would say hands down, it is not taking accountability for the numbers. So whether it's out of fear, whether it's out of, I'm just going to delegate that to somebody else, you can't effectively run your business and grow your business the way you want if you don't know the numbers and you're not responsible for them. So I'm not suggesting everyone needs to do their own bookkeeping or their own accounting. They certainly can hire people to help them with that, but they should be looking at their numbers weekly, assessing their goals in context of their financial position. And so my wish for everybody would be, if you're not looking at your numbers right now, to be able to run your business the most effectively, start being educated on that. And in my business, Bissett Financial Fitness, we really talk about it from a positivity standpoint. It's not that you're financially illiterate. You're somewhere on this journey of financial fitness, and every day you can move forward and learn new skills. So wherever you are, that's where you're starting. So what can you do today to improve your knowledge about your financial position? It might be just looking at your bank account today. And then tomorrow you're going to do something else. So take those small bite-sized steps, allow yourself some latitude to make mistakes. But the sooner that you're in charge of your numbers and using them to guide your future and the goals to grow your business, you're going to feel a lot more comfortable. You're going to have a lot less anxiety, and you will start to see changes in those numbers, because we know whatever we put attention to certainly gets the focus and certainly does better.
Now, how do we know, as an entrepreneur, how do you know whether or not your company is financially fit? Because I feel I used to, my ex-husband was an entrepreneur, at least thought he was. And, and we had disagreements on what his company being financially fit actually meant. Like whether or not it, like, I was using my very analytical academic standards, and he was like, well, look, there's money here. And I'm like, okay, but that doesn't mean
For sure. And so my answer is probably going to come at it a little bit, just like you were assessing it. So put yourself in the shoes of any one of the major stakeholders that deals with your company. And so one of them would be like a lender. You're trying to go to the bank, you're trying to get financing. Certainly a lender cares what is your financial position. I would say too many entrepreneurs focus on the top line, on the sales, like how much sales did I make? And really it's important to focus on how much money did I actually make? Because if you're selling all your products or services at a loss, if you grow that, you're just going to magnify the loss. So you need to be very in tune with how much does it cost to deliver your product and service, focus on that bottom line. And then I know it may sound a little bit more complex, but the balance sheet is really important. And that's where you talk about all your assets, all of the liabilities, the equity that's in the company. If you think about it personally, you know that if you have too much debt in your personal life, it gets to this place where you can't make all the payments anymore. Same thing happens to a company. So lenders really care about, if we loan you money, do you make enough profit to pay us back? And then do you have too much debt? So maybe you're at a tipping point where your whole company might be in jeopardy. And so they're looking at both sides of those financial statements. And so looking through their lens helps entrepreneurs realize what's important. It also gives you a lot of credibility when you go to talk to your lender or you're applying for a loan. If you can explain what was going on in the business with maybe some results that were unfavorable in the past, it shows that you understand it. You've learned from whatever happened, and that you're actually going to make some changes if the same thing were to happen again, that you're really credible. And they're looking for credibility in management. So it's okay to have made mistakes, and it's great that you can show that you've learned and that you will be doing something different in the future.
Very true. Very true. That is very good advice. Now, how would you assess your costing and your profits? I think you touched on that in your last answer, and how you start making real money. Like, how do you know when you're making real money? How do you determine like what your profit line should be? You know what I mean? I guess it depends on the industry, but how do you know whether or not it's a good enough margin?
Yeah. So first of all, I want you to start by taking out a piece of paper, and you're going to write down all of the costs that have to be paid to deliver your product or service. So we don't need to be fancy, but we're going to look up the numbers. We're going to write them down. So I was talking to a client this morning, and we were talking about their rust protection business, rust coating. So when the car comes in to get protected, it has to get cleaned. Somebody's got to wash it. That's the labor for that person and the cost for all those chemicals. Now we're going to apply the rust protection. So what time, what amount of chemicals, then we're going to do an inspection. So adding up all of those pieces of variable costs, the things that change because you're doing it, add those all up. That doesn't mean whatever's left is your profit, because probably to have your location, you had to pay rent. You probably had to pay your utilities. You had to pay for internet, whether or not you sold anything. So then we've got to factor in some amount for that. So by adding up a proportion of those things you've got to pay, whether or not you sell anything, plus the cost when you do sell it, you get to this number that then you're going to want to tack on profit. So on the flip side, we're going to look into the market and see who else is selling what we're selling. Is ours better or worse than theirs? Because we don't always need to be the lowest cost provider. If we're providing something that has more value, we're going to charge a premium price. So then the two pieces meet and we come together. Is the amount we think we can charge, does that cover all of those costs, the ones we pay when we sell something, the ones we pay when we don't sell something, and that profit that's built in there? So that helps guide you around how much margin you can put in there. Some businesses, they're going to be able to have economies of scale. They may make a certain amount when they sell a small number of things, but as they continue to grow, if their overhead's not very high, they're going to be able to make a lot more profit. So it does depend by industry, but let's just start with the facts again, figure out how much it actually costs you. And I know that I would say probably 75 to 80% of the entrepreneurs, when I'm working with them doing the coaching and we do this exercise, 75 to 80% are not profitable on their product or service and didn't realize.
Exactly. And I think you probably should be doing that first. Like when you say you're going to start a business, you should be doing that from the outset to make sure that your pricing is reasonable. Otherwise, you're not going to understand why you don't seem to ever have any money, yet you're making all these sales.
For sure. And so my first tip for anybody who's thinking about starting a business, because in this time, a lot of people are thinking about making their own business if they've lost their job. Maybe they have a skill set that allows them to do that. And there's really no better time to start a business if you have something that's marketable. But start with the business plan and actually work through those numbers, just as you suggested, Melanie. And then you may see right away, hey, this isn't very profitable, but if I pivot my offering just a little bit, I'm still doing mostly the same thing, but I'm going to do it now like this. That could be profitable. And so by spending more time up front and actually creating a business plan that covers like the industry, financial, the business risk associated with your business, working through those numbers, you could save yourself a lot of pain and suffering and a lot of money over the long term and actually start off more successfully.
Now, do you have a recommended amount of time for your business plan to cover that you personally recommend? Because of course you could do a 5-year business plan, you could do a 1-year business plan, you could do a 3-month, a 90-day business plan, depending on what you want to do. I in my opinion, shorter is better because things do change. But what's your opinion on that?
I think it really comes down to what industry you're in and how much money you have to outlay at the beginning. If you're going to start up a business and I'm going to start coaching online and I can do it with Zoom, I've got pretty minimal expenses related to that. So I don't need to be as worried about 2 years out or 3 years out because I've got little costs associated with it. So maybe I do like a 6-month forecast. If though I'm getting into something where I'm going to create some kind of online platform and I'm going to have significant research and development to be able to bring this to market, I need to be a lot more confident about how valid this idea is and actually go out farther in the numbers, because we know that anytime we're doing something in our business, it takes longer than we think it will, and it costs way more than we think it will. So if you're planning what's the amount of money I need to have on reserve to get me through until I'm making money, you want to plan for it taking longer than you expect. So not necessarily direct answer to your question, because it does so depend on the industry. But if you're popping online and starting a business and you just need a website, you don't need a 5-year forecast.
Right. But if you're doing something that's a little more long-term, I would think that you need more of a long-term business plan to make sure you're going to make money. That makes sense. We're up against a commercial break real quick. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. My guest today is Tracey Bisssett. She's a speaker, financial coach, president and CEO of Bissett Financial. Did I have that right? Of
Yes.
Bissett Financial. She's talking to us about cash flow planning for entrepreneurs in good and bad times. We're very happy to have her on the show today. We'll be right back in a few minutes.
Don't just pass the IRS exams. Why not pass them all and get a solid tax education too? Visit irsexams.school and let the Tax Mama staff get you started today. All our live and self-study tax courses offer you the convenience to study online on your own time and have everything you need to succeed. Tax Mama teaches you tax law, practice, and representation from the ground up. That's irsexams.school. Why wait? Get enrolled today in our premium course or the self-study class. That's irsexams.school. It's way more than just a review course. It will improve your entire future.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
Hey, are you guys listening? This is Shannon. From Right Wing with Shannon and Mike Media on SHR Media. I know you've been wondering where we are and what's been going on. Well, folks, that's right. We're back. So please, join us 7 to 9 a.m. Monday through Thursday on SHR Media, on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and Spotify, and Facebook Live at 11 a.m. on Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM at Facebook. You don't want to miss a minute. We've got lots of guests, lots of segments, and lots of interesting things. And let's face it, there's nowhere for you to go, so you might as well tune in. Again, Right Wing, Shannon and Mike in the AM. We're back live on the air on SHR Media, 7 to 9 a.m. Monday to Thursday, audio and Facebook Live, audio and video. Yes, we are going to do video. Facebook Live, Right Wing, Shannon and Mike in the AM. See you soon.
Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, a mere 2 miles from the state capital, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcats Balloon Radio Show can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern, only on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com to listen. You can also watch on the SHR Media Facebook page and the SHR Media YouTube channel. No goldfish were abused in the making of this ad.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
It is he that is me, bringing perspective from across the sea. Join me, Jack Alexander, 4 days a week for the Jack Alexander Experiment podcast, as I take a unique outsider's look at the news and issues affecting life and liberty here in the USA. I'll show you what the mainstream media refuses to. Politics, border security, defense, healthcare, travel, nothing is off limits. Catch the Jack Alexander Experiment podcast each Monday to Thursday on Facebook, YouTube, and everywhere good podcasts can be found. Also, check out the website, www.jackalexanderexperiment.com.
Southern Sense is Conservative Talk with Andy, the radio chick you balance as host and C.S. Bennett co-host. Informative, fun, irreverent, and politically incorrect. You never know where they'll go, but you'll love the journey. Annie is a top conservative host on Top Talk Radio and features some of the finest guests packed with important politicians and newsmakers. Listen every Friday, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern, 2 to 3 Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Remember, Southern Sense is common sense.
After 6 years covering terror and corruption, the Unpleasant Blind Guy is making a change. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker and YouTube through SHR Media and on the Western Free Radio Network as I team up with Jeff Mitchell, host of the English Defense League radio show on blogtalkradio.com. Check show pages for airtimes. It's the Unpleasant Blind Guy.
On ADL Radio,
there's
no surrender ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
And we're back. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your business diva, Melanie Collette. My guest today is Tracey Bisssett. She is the CEO and founder of Bissett Financial. She's also a speaker and financial consultant, and she's talking to us today about cash flow planning for entrepreneurs. And I wanted to ask you, one thing about entrepreneurs, especially during these times, entrepreneurs can be really hard on themselves. And so what are some things that entrepreneurs are doing right that they may not even be giving themselves credit for?
That's a great question. And this always comes up with clients when I start working with them. They'll tell me, I don't know anything about numbers. I don't know anything about my financial situation. And I'll say to them, well, how long have you been in business? And so they may say 6 months, 9 months, 2 years, 10 years, whatever it is. And I tell them, if you've been in business for more than a couple months, you know how to manage cash flow. And you may not describe it the way that I do. You may not talk about it the way that I do. But by the fact that you're still in existence and you're managing your cash flow, you know how to do it. It might not be the best way. It might not be the way we get to when we're done working together, but you know how to survive and manage that cash flow. Given my time at the bank, I was able to see very quickly how companies can go out of business in as quick as 90 days if they're providing products or services where they deliver them and then they get paid after the fact. So somebody's paying an invoice in 60, 90, 120 days or not paying at all of a sudden that cash flow can dry up very quickly. So if you're able to stay afloat and you're managing it, you definitely already have a good foundation, and we're building on something that you already have, and we're not starting from scratch.
Oh, that is very good. That's very good, because I think that there's a lot of people who are finding themselves in that situation and are not sure. Now, in what ways do entrepreneurs need to hold themselves accountable? What would you say to that? Because I think a lot of times, especially if it's something you're enthusiastic about, right? And you really want to turn it into a business because it's fun or whatever the case may be, it's hard to hold ourselves accountable if maybe it's not working out.
For sure. And so the first thing you need to take accountability on is understanding and knowing that financial position. Like I've mentioned, you don't need to do it alone. You certainly can delegate the bookkeeping, have an accountant support you, but you need to be responsible for it. You don't delegate your marketing strategy. You don't delegate your goals for the company. So the financial piece needs to be absolutely critical in your role as CEO and leader of that business. Your business is going to move ahead at the pace and in a way that is how you treat it and how you take care of that. Anybody who's looking to grow their business will quickly find out, if they don't know at the beginning, growth is really hungry and it requires cash to fuel it. So whether you've got cash reserves, whether you need to buy or access capital, whether that's through a lender, maybe it's through an investor, growth is super hungry. So be accountable for the numbers, which does not mean, though, you can't get help. So some people may feel shy about asking for help, but when you started your business, and I know this when I started mine, when I was working at the bank, I was an expert in financial analysis, loan structuring, dealing with clients, but I didn't know very much about marketing. I didn't know enough about social media, and I had to ask for help in all kinds of different areas. When you're an entrepreneur, you're wearing about 25, 30 hats, and you can't be expected to be the authority on everything. So recognizing that quite early in your business and that you should get help where you need it is just part of having a successful company and moving ahead and being able to grow for the future.
Is there a time that when you know that it's time to quit? Like, is it like, how do you know if you should keep going, if you should just change things, or if you should quit? There's a lot of people, I mean, even with the COVID situation going on, there's a lot of businesses that closed for good, unfortunately. And, I wonder how they come to make that decision and just don't say, I'm going to close down until COVID goes away, or I'm going to close down forever. Quite a few businesses, even some chains, have made the decision to close down forever. How do you get to that? How do you know when it's that time?
Well, I would wager to guess without seeing their numbers, but many of these companies that are closing down now, they were not doing well when it was a profitable time. The economy was booming. So if you're not making money and doing well in good times, if your particular industry is impacted, like the most are, you're not going to have a very good time at that. And so we talked about going out, applying for loans, applying for supports that you can. But if you were already struggling with a loan, struggling to get sales, you knew you weren't profitable, you could actually do more harm to yourself by going out and getting more debt in this time of COVID. So it all still comes back to the numbers, knowing where you were pre-COVID, were things going well? If you were already struggling and you weren't making money, and maybe you figured it out that maybe your product or service was off the mark and people weren't happy with that. Maybe a new substitute has come along that people were more interested in. If you weren't able to pivot and change your strategy, I'm not sure more debt's going to help you do that. But it still comes back to the numbers. Also, what you can afford to lose. So if you have a lot of personal savings and you're okay using those to fund the business for an indeterminate amount of time, that's a personal decision. And so the actual time when you're going to stop is going to be up to every person. But it may be making sense to not bring on more debt, not to get more tied down to kind of a sinking ship, if you will. And it's hard to give up on your dream, because when you started your business, you were so emotionally tied to it. But if you can stay with the facts, and you need to think about the bigger picture, what are my goals for my life? What are the goals for my family? What would I like to provide? And if you putting more personal funds into the business is going to harm you being able to deliver things for your family, I think you need to have those discussions with yourself and with your family too.
Sure, of course. Well, listen, I want to thank you so much for being on the show today. So much really good information, especially at this particular time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And so for anybody listening who's excited to take a step forward, I've got a download for you. You can go in and get a money meeting agenda so you know where to start. So you can head over to cashcoach.biz and download that and get started today so that you have somewhere to start and take that step on your financial fitness journey. So thank you so much, Melanie.
That's cashcoach.biz. I want to put that in the Facey chat as well.
Yes. So that people can get started today. And you might have tuned in today and you didn't know where to start. This is a place you can do it. And I would recommend people set money meetings with themselves weekly. If you've got a partner in the business, have them join, but just take those steps moving forward to improve your level of knowledge, and you have a little bit of a roadmap to do it.
And is there any place that they can follow you on social media?
Yes, I'm on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. So send me a direct message on any of those platforms, and I'd be so happy to hear your comments, answer your questions. And it's either Tracey Bisssett or it's Bissett FinFit on all the platforms.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being on the show today. We really appreciate it. And I want to thank everybody who was watching on the Facey chat. If you are listening to this as a download via iTunes or any of the other podcasts platforms, I really appreciate it. And I appreciate Eve Rosenberg from taxmama.com. Thank you so much for being a sponsor on the show. We really appreciate you. And I want everyone to remember that this is very important, because after all, it's your money. Have a great night.